My name is Sophia Harper and I am 27 years old, the eldest of 3 siblings, and I have always tried to do the right thing, always tried to put others before myself, always worked hard and saved every penny I could so that I could support my family in ways that mattered, but nothing could have prepared me for the moment I discovered that the very people I trusted the most, the people I gave my time, my energy, and my money to, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. Because just last month I gave my parents $11,450 to help pay the mortgage, money I had worked for tirelessly, money I had set aside with the belief that it would be used responsibly to keep our home safe and secure, and yet they used it in a way that cut me out entirely, in a way that made me feel invisible, unimportant, and completely disregarded, because they spent it taking my younger siblings to Disney without even mentioning it to me, laughing and planning while I struggled to cover my own expenses and wondering why my efforts were never enough, and as I scrolled through photos and videos on social media that showed my siblings smiling and enjoying themselves while I was left out of every single moment I had helped make possible, a mix of shock, heartbreak, disbelief, and anger rose inside me like a storm I could not control. And I realized at that moment that nothing would ever be the same in my family, that my trust had been shattered in ways I could not have imagined, and that I could not just sit back and let this slide. I could not pretend it did not hurt. I could not let my parents think they could continue to manipulate and dismiss me without consequences. And a part of me knew that I had to act, that I had to find a way to reclaim my dignity, my voice, and my place in my own family. Because if I did not do something now, I would never forgive myself for allowing them to treat me this way. So if you have ever been betrayed by someone you loved, hit the like button and comment. I feel you, because I want to hear your story and I want you to know that you are not alone in feeling the pain of being invisible and disregarded by the people who were supposed to care the most. I had just gotten home from work that evening, my body aching from another long day at the office. I dropped my bag by the door and sat on the edge of my bed with my laptop balanced on my knees. I wanted a moment to relax, a moment to remind myself that everything I had done over the past few weeks was worth it. After all, I had just given my parents $11,450 to help pay the mortgage. It wasn't easy for me to part with that much money, but I believed it was the right thing to do. I told myself that sacrifice was part of being the oldest child, part of loving your family enough to keep them afloat. I opened my social media feed out of habit, ready to zone out for a bit. The very first thing that popped up on my screen stopped me cold. My younger brother grinning ear to ear in front of Cinderella's castle. My sister held a Mickey Mouse balloon, her face lit with excitement. My parents are standing with them, smiling and holding churros, wearing matching Disney shirts. Picture after picture filled my feed, each one more cheerful than the last. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This trip hadn't been mentioned to me at all. No one had asked if I wanted to come. No one even told me they were going. The longer I stared, the harder it became to breathe. They were all together, happy, carefree, enjoying a vacation that I had unknowingly paid for while I had spent the last few weeks eating instant noodles for dinner and skipping small luxuries just to make sure that I could give them what they needed. I felt my stomach twist as I clicked through more photos. I saw them on rides, in restaurants, posing with characters. It was not just a day trip, it was a full vacation. My chest felt tight as I opened the family group chat, scrolling back through messages that I had missed while I was too busy working overtime shifts. The deeper I went, the worse it became. There were messages about booking the tickets, deciding what dates worked best, laughing about which rides they would try first. There was even a message from my mom saying, "Good thing Sophia is so busy, she won't even notice us planning." Reading that felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just an oversight. It wasn't a last-minute decision. They had intentionally kept me out of it. I sat there, frozen, feeling a strange mix of sadness and anger fighting for control inside me. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, I just stared at the screen with my jaw clenched, feeling my pulse quicken. My family had taken my hard-earned money I had given them to help save our home, and used it to go on a vacation without me. Worse than that, they had planned it together, laughed about it, and hidden it from me. I was not just forgotten, I was excluded. Rage started to rise in me, hot and heavy, burning away the numbness I had felt at first. I thought about the late nights I had worked, the sacrifices I had made, The guilt I had felt when I handed over that envelope of cash because it meant I couldn't buy myself the new shoes I needed and couldn't take the small weekend trip I had been saving for. All of that was gone. And for what? So my family could eat Dole Whip and pose for pictures with Mickey Mouse? I closed my laptop and sat very still, trying to process the storm of emotions running through me. My heart ached, but under the ache was something sharp, something growing stronger by the second. I realized this wasn't just about a trip. This was about every time I had been told I was too serious, every time I had been left out of decisions because I was the responsible one, every time I had been expected to carry more than my share without complaint. This time was different. This time, they had crossed a line. As much as I loved them, I couldn't let this go, not this time. I knew in my gut that if I stayed quiet, if I let this pass, they would keep doing it. They would keep taking advantage of me until there was nothing left of me to give. My hands were shaking as I whispered to myself. I knew I couldn't let this slide. I had to do something. Growing up in our small Ohio town, our family always seemed perfectly normal from the outside. I was the firstborn, the so-called responsible one, the girl who never missed a homework assignment, who always remembered to do the dishes, who helped Dad mow the lawn when he was too tired after work. My parents, Laura and Mitchell Harper, often told neighbors how proud they were of me, but somehow their praise never quite felt the same at home. It was like being appreciated only for what I could do for them, not for who I was. My younger brother, Tyler, was the golden child. He had this effortless charm that made people melt, and my parents adored him for it. When he wanted something, he just had to flash his mischievous smile and the rules bent for him. My little sister, Ava, was the baby of the family, and that meant she was treated like royalty. Everyone tiptoed around her feelings, and I was expected to be patient when she threw tantrums or refused to do her chores. It wasn't that I didn't love them so, of course I did, but as I look back now, I see that the favoritism had been there all along, quietly shaping the way I saw myself. I can still remember one afternoon when I was 12 years old. I had just won first place at the county spelling bee, a big deal for me at the time. I came home beaming, clutching my little trophy, expecting at least a small celebration. Instead, I found my parents fussing over Tyler, who had scraped his knee at soccer practice. The whole kitchen was focused on him while I stood in the doorway, my victory completely forgotten. Mom glanced up and said, "That's nice, honey, put the trophy on the mantel," before going back to dabbing peroxide on Tyler's leg. Moments like that piled up over the years, quiet but heavy, like snow falling until it covers everything. When Ava wanted a new phone, the family somehow found room in the budget for it, even if it meant putting off buying school supplies for me until the last minute. When Tyler got a bad grade, it was blamed on the teacher. When I got one, I was told I should have studied harder. Little by little, I learned that my worth was measured by how much I could hold everything together. By the time I hit my 20s, I had settled into my role as the dependable one. I picked up extra shifts when Dad was out of work. I helped Mom plan Ava's Sweet 16 party, staying up late to decorate the cake and make sure the decorations were perfect. I helped Tyler pay for his first car when he couldn't save enough on his own. It was always me stepping in, always me filling the gaps. But things began to shift last year. I started noticing conversations that seemed to stop the second I entered the room. My parents and siblings would exchange glances, then laugh it off, saying it was nothing important. I tried to shrug it off, but deep down, I knew something was happening. One night, as I walked past the living room on my way to bed, I heard them talking in low voices. I paused by the door, heart thudding. "Should we tell Sophia?" Ava's voice was soft, uncertain. "No," my mom replied quickly. "She'll make a big deal about it. Besides, she's too busy working to come anyway." There was a murmur of agreement, and then Tyler chuckled. "Okay, but she's going to find out eventually when we post pictures." I remember standing there, frozen, my stomach twisting into knots. I didn't need to hear the whole conversation to know what they were planning. They were talking about the trip they were already secretly organizing. My chest ached as I turned away from the doorway, quietly climbing the stairs so no one would know I had been listening. Lying awake that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt something shift inside me. For years I had told myself that being the responsible one was my duty, that maybe it was natural for me to be left out of the fun sometimes because I was older, because I could handle it. But hearing them talk like that, hearing my own mother say I shouldn't be included, cracked something in me. The tears came slowly at first, hot and angry. Then they wouldn't stop. I felt invisible, as though all the times I had sacrificed for them meant nothing. And in that moment, through the tears and the heartbreak, another feeling began to rise up, a spark of determination that burned hotter with every passing minute. I wiped my face and sat up, staring into the darkness of my room. I wasn't going to let this keep happening. I wasn't going to be the quiet one who just swallowed the pain anymore. I felt a fire inside me. I wouldn't be invisible forever. I didn't sleep much the night I overheard them talking about the trip. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my mother's voice saying I didn't need to know, that I wouldn't be missed. By morning, my chest felt tight, and I knew I couldn't just keep pretending nothing had happened. I deserved answers. That evening, after dinner, I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for the right moment. My parents were putting dishes away while Tyler scrolled on his phone and Ava absent-mindedly twirled a strand of her hair. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. Finally, I took a deep breath and said, "Can we talk about something?" They all turned to look at me, a little surprised. "Sure," my dad said, leaning against the counter. "I know about the trip," I said quietly, staring down at my hands. "I saw the messages in the group chat. And I heard you talking about it last night." The room went very still. For a moment, no one said anything. Then my mom sighed, a little too dramatically, and said, "Sophia, you're making this a bigger deal than it is. We just thought it would be nice to do something fun with the kids before summer ends." I blinked at her, feeling my throat tighten. "I'm your kid too," I said, my voice shaking. "And I'm the one who just gave you $11,450 to help save this house. Don't you think I should have been asked if I wanted to go?" My dad rubbed the back of his neck and gave me a look that was half pity, half annoyance. "Sophia, we didn't want to bother you. You work so much, and honestly, we figured you wouldn't even have time to come." "That wasn't your decision to make," I shot back, my voice louder than I intended. "I could have taken time off if you had told me. I would have found a way to make it work." Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair, glancing between us, and Ava crossed her arms, looking annoyed. "It's not that big of a deal," she muttered. "Not that big of a deal," I repeated, my voice cracking. "I've been helping keep this family afloat for years. I've sacrificed trips and nights out and everything I wanted so we wouldn't fall behind. And now you take the money I gave you to save this house and spend it on a vacation I wasn't even invited to." My mom frowned, her tone soft but patronizing. "Honey, the money was for the mortgage, but we're not months behind like you think. We just needed a little breathing room. This trip was our way of celebrating after such a hard year." Her words felt like a slap. I stared at her, realizing that she wasn't even denying it. They had used my money to take a trip without me and they didn't even feel guilty about it. I felt my chest burn with anger, but I tried to keep my composure. "You could have celebrated with me. We could have gone together. Why do I always have to be the one left out?" My dad sighed, clearly ready for the conversation to be over. "Sophia, you're overreacting. You need to calm down." That sentence made something snap inside me. "I am not overreacting," I said firmly, standing up from the table. My hands were shaking, and I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. "I'm telling you how I feel, and you're dismissing me like I don't matter." Tyler put his phone down and finally spoke. "Look, Soph, it's already booked. The tickets, the hotel, everything. We can't just change it now." That was the moment it became real. The trip was happening with or without me. I had hoped that maybe this confrontation would make them reconsider, that they'd say I could join them after all, but they weren't going to. The decision had been made, and I wasn't a part of it. I sat back down, my whole body numb, my anger replaced with a hollow ache. I had expected them to at least apologize, to acknowledge how wrong it was. Instead, all I got was gaslighting, as if my feelings were an overreaction, as if I was somehow at fault for wanting to be included in my own family's plans. I swallowed hard and looked at them one by one, my voice quiet but steady. "You know what? Do whatever you want. But don't expect me to just sit here and pretend this is okay." They all exchanged awkward glances, and I could tell they didn't take me seriously. That hurt worse than anything they had said. Have you ever had to confront someone close about betrayal? Comment, yes, if you have. I want to know how you handled it. As I went upstairs to my room, I felt something shift inside me again, stronger than before. If they didn't take me seriously, then I would show them how serious I was. I stood by my window, staring out at the dark yard, my fists clenched. I knew that if I did nothing, they'd never respect me again. That night I sat on my bed with the glow of my laptop lighting up my face, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on my chest. For a long time, I just stared at the blank screen, trying to steady my breathing. My anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was colder now, sharper. The tears were gone. What was left was determination. I wasn't just going to sit back and let this happen. I was going to make sure they understood exactly how much they had hurt me and why they could never do it again. The first person I called was Marcus. He had been my best friend since high school, the one person who had seen every side of me. Marcus was the kind of friend who could make me laugh on my worst days but also tell me the hard truths when I needed to hear them. As soon as he answered, I blurted out everything: how I gave my parents the money, how I found out about the trip, how they had brushed me off when I confronted them. Marcus didn't interrupt once. When I finally stopped talking, there was a long pause on the other end. Then he said quietly, "Soph, you've been carrying them on your back for years. It's about time they realize what they've done." His words felt like a spark, igniting something inside me. "So what do I do?" I asked, my voice low. "You gather the truth," Marcus said firmly. "If they won't admit what they did, you make sure you have the proof. You show them how deep this betrayal goes. Not just for you, but so they can't pretend they don't see it anymore." That conversation was the start of everything. The next few days, I kept my head down, acting as though everything was normal. But behind the scenes, I was watching, listening, collecting every piece of evidence I could find. I went through the family group chat again and saved screenshots of every message about the trip. I combed through my bank transactions and highlighted the withdrawal I had made for the mortgage money. I even found the crumpled receipt for the envelope I had used to give them the cash and tucked it safely into my desk drawer. At first, it felt strange to be digging through my own family's things. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of the look on my parents' faces when they dismissed me, of the way they acted like my pain didn't matter. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing this so they would finally see me. One afternoon, while my parents were out running errands, I went into the home office to look for anything that might explain where the money had gone. I opened drawers quietly, carefully, not wanting to leave any sign I had been there. Most of what I found was ordinary old tax returns, utility bills, expired coupons, but then, tucked at the back of a lower drawer, I found a thin folder that made my heart stop. Inside was paperwork for a bank account I had never heard of. The account wasn't in both of my parents' names, it was only in my mom's. And the balance at the top of the statement made my breath catch. They had money. Not just a little money, but enough to have covered the mortgage without needing my help at all. I sank into the office chair, the papers trembling in my hands. This wasn't just about a Disney trip anymore. This meant my parents hadn't been completely honest about how bad things were financially. They had let me believe we were on the edge of losing the house, let me hand over nearly every dollar I had saved, while they kept a secret stash tucked away in a separate account. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the numbers, feeling my whole world tilt. Everything I thought I knew about them, everything I thought I understood about why they made the choices they did, suddenly didn't make sense anymore. I put the papers back exactly as I had found them and closed the drawer, my hands shaking. I went upstairs to my room and sat on the floor with my back against the bed, hugging my knees to my chest. My heart was pounding so hard it almost hurt. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus again. When he answered, I whispered, "Marcus, it's worse than I thought. They had money. They didn't even need mine." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, and then Marcus said, his voice dark, "Soph, this isn't just careless. This is betrayal." Hearing him say the word made it real. Betrayal. That was exactly what it was. And now, I wasn't just angry, I was determined. If they wanted to treat me like I was invisible, then I was going to make sure my next move was one they could never ignore. As I sat there in the quiet of my room, a strange calm settled over me. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something, like the version of me who always stayed quiet and did what she was told was slipping away, and someone stronger was taking her place. Everything I thought I knew about them was a lie. The days after I found the hidden bank account felt different. The house felt smaller somehow, the air heavier, as though my parents could sense something in me had shifted. They didn't say much, but I caught the way my mom's eyes lingered on me at dinner, the way my dad seemed a little more cautious when he spoke. They could feel the tension growing, even if they didn't know why. Inside, I felt more focused than ever. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was calculating. Every moment I spent in that house was part of my plan now. I had spent too many years being the quiet, dependable one, the person who smoothed things over so everyone else could be comfortable. Now I wanted them to feel uncomfortable. I wanted them to know something was coming, even if they didn't know what. The first step came one afternoon when I noticed an old bill from the internet company sitting on the counter. It was addressed to me, even though everyone used the Wi-Fi. I had been the one paying that bill for months, quietly covering it without asking for help, because I didn't want to hear my parents complain about money again. But looking at that bill now, I felt something inside me snap. I went straight to my room, opened my laptop, and logged into the account. My hands were steady, almost unnervingly calm, as I updated the payment settings so that the bill would now auto-charge to my parents' credit card instead of mine. It was a small thing, but as soon as I hit save, I felt a rush of satisfaction. It was like flipping a switch inside me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just giving, I was taking something back. When the next month rolled around and my dad saw the charge on his card, he frowned. "Why did the internet bill go on here?" he asked over breakfast. I looked him straight in the eye, my tone even. "Because everyone uses it. It shouldn't come out of just my paycheck." He looked like he wanted to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. I just stood up, rinsed my plate, and walked away. That was the first time I had ever seen him at a loss for words, and it felt like the smallest but sweetest victory. But I wasn't finished yet. The next step was harder, because it meant confronting Tyler and Ava directly. I found them in the living room one evening, Tyler on the couch scrolling through his phone and Ava stretched out watching a video. My heart pounded as I stood in front of them. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. They both glanced at me, clearly not thrilled to pause what they were doing. "About what?" Tyler asked. "About Disney," I said, watching their expressions carefully. Ava immediately sat up, her face defensive. "What about it?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "You knew what was happening. You knew they were leaving me out, and neither of you said a word. Did you even think about how that might feel?" Tyler sighed and tossed his phone aside. "Soph, we didn't think it was our job to tell you. Mom and Dad said you were too busy." "That's not an excuse." I cut him off, my voice rising. "You're my siblings. You could have said something. You could have stood up for me." Ava crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. "We just didn't want drama." That made me laugh, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "You didn't want drama? Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to be the only one left out? Do you know what it's like to give away everything you've saved, only to find out you were paying for everyone else's happiness except your own?" For a moment, neither of them said anything. Tyler looked away, uncomfortable, and Ava's expression softened just slightly, though she didn't apologize. "Would you stand up to siblings if they were complicit? Comment yes or no. I really want to know how you'd handle it." I took a step closer, lowering my voice but making sure every word landed. "This isn't going to keep happening. I'm done being left out. I'm done being treated like I don't matter. From now on, things are going to be different." Tyler nodded slowly, finally meeting my gaze. Ava didn't say a word, but she didn't argue either. And that was enough for now. When I walked away from that conversation, my legs felt shaky, but there was a strange thrill in my chest. For the first time, I was pushed back. For the first time, I had made them stop and think. Later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt that same fire burning inside me again, hotter and stronger than before. My first small victory had given me a taste of what it felt like to stand up for myself, and I wanted more. They finally realized I was not backing down. The house felt colder the next morning. Not physically, but emotionally. Every conversation was shorter, sharper, and filled with an invisible weight. I moved through the kitchen quietly, pouring myself coffee while Mom hummed as if nothing had happened the night before, as if my confrontation with Tyler and Ava had just been a minor inconvenience she could brush away with a smile. My chest ached as I watched her move around the kitchen so casually, because part of me wished I could go back to the days when her smile felt like comfort instead of a reminder of everything I had lost. As I sat at the table sipping my coffee, memories came rushing back without my permission. I remembered being 8 years old, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor while Dad taught me how to tie my shoes, cheering for me when I finally got it right. I remembered family road trips to Lake Michigan where we played car games and laughed until our faces hurt. Those memories used to be my safe place, a reminder that we were a family who loved one another, but now they felt like a cruel joke, like a faded photograph of people who no longer existed. The nostalgia hurt more than the anger. It was easier to be furious than to admit I missed them, easier to plan revenge than to admit I wished they would simply see me, love me, and choose me like they used to. For a brief moment, I thought about forgiveness. I thought about sitting down with my parents, telling them how deeply I was hurt, and hoping they would finally understand. But the moment I tried to imagine it, I could already hear my dad's dismissive tone and my mom's tired sigh. They would minimize it, turn it around, make it my fault somehow. The thought made my stomach twist. That night over dinner, the arguments started again. It began with something small, Mom mentioning the Disney trip casually like it was just another family outing. "We were thinking of getting matching shirts for everyone," she said with a laugh, and my fork clattered against my plate louder than I meant it to. "Everyone?" I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. She froze for a second and then gave me that patronizing smile that made me want to scream. "Well, you know what I mean." "No, I don't know what you mean," I shot back, my voice shaking. "You keep saying this like it's just a normal trip, like it doesn't matter that you're leaving me out." Dad sighed heavily, clearly irritated. "Sophia, we've been over this. You're an adult. You can't expect to be included in everything. We thought you'd be too busy." Too busy. Those words felt like a slap. Too busy to go on a trip I practically paid for. Too busy to deserve to be part of the family I had sacrificed for over and over again. I pushed back from the table before I said something I couldn't take back, retreating to my room and slamming the door harder than I intended. I sat on the floor of my room, breathing hard, trying to stop the tears from coming. That was when I decided to check the mortgage account again, partly to remind myself why I was so upset in the first place. I pulled up the statements on my laptop, scrolling through the payments until I saw something that made my blood run cold. The money I had given them wasn't just spent on Disney tickets. They had used part of it to cover credit card debt I didn't even know they had, and another portion had been withdrawn as cash. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. It was one thing to leave me out of a vacation. It was another thing entirely to lie about why they needed the money in the first place. Every word they had said about being behind on the mortgage echoed in my mind, and I felt something inside me harden. I closed the laptop slowly, my mind racing. The part of me that had considered forgiveness earlier was gone now, burned away by this fresh betrayal. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about respect, honesty, and the fact that my parents had looked me in the eye and lied to me without flinching. I stood up, my reflection in the mirror catching my attention. I barely recognized myself. My eyes looked sharper, my face more determined. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who kept quiet, who stayed out of the way, who never wanted to make waves. She is gone now. I had no choice but to act boldly. I woke up the next morning with my heart still pounding from the discovery I made the night before. The lies, the manipulation, the casual way they had used my sacrifice for their convenience, it all sat like a stone in my chest. I spent most of the morning pacing around my room, running through every possible way I could fight back. Talking to them again would lead nowhere. Trying to reason with them would just give them another chance to twist the story, to paint me as ungrateful or dramatic. So I opened my laptop and stared at the blank screen for what felt like hours before finally typing the first words. I poured everything out, the savings I had worked for, the way I handed them over to my parents because I trusted them, the moment I saw the Disney photos without my name mentioned anywhere. I wrote about what it felt like to be invisible in my own family, to watch everyone else get rewarded while I was left out. I didn't mention names, but I gave enough detail that anyone reading could feel the betrayal, could see the picture of a daughter who had been taken advantage of. When I hit post, my hands were shaking. It felt like stepping off a cliff. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew there was no going back. At first, there was silence. The post got a few likes, a handful of comments saying things like "this is heartbreaking and you deserve better." By the afternoon, though, it had started to spread. Someone shared it on a bigger Facebook group about family drama, and soon strangers were flooding the comments, telling me I was right to feel hurt, encouraging me to stand up for myself, sharing their own similar experiences. By that evening, my phone was buzzing non-stop with notifications. The online buzz was growing, and it was impossible for my family not to notice. I heard hushed voices in the kitchen when I walked by, my parents whispering to each other, trying to figure out who had shared our business online. I stayed quiet, pretending I didn't know what they were talking about, but inside I was both nervous and exhilarated. The next day, the situation exploded. My aunt called, her voice sharp and demanding as she spoke to my parents on speakerphone. I was sitting in the living room when the call came through, so I heard every word. "Is it true?" she asked, not even saying hello. "Did you really take Sophia's money and spend it on a vacation without her?" Mom's voice wavered as she tried to explain, but every excuse sounded thinner than the last. Dad jumped in, raising his voice, saying it wasn't anyone else's business, but my aunt wouldn't let up. "You made it everyone's business the moment you used your daughter's money for something like that," she snapped. Then came more calls from my uncle, my grandmother, even a cousin I hadn't spoken to in months. They were all furious, all demanding answers, all telling my parents they had gone too far. I sat quietly on the couch, my hands folded in my lap, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: power. For once, they weren't in control of the narrative. For once, everyone could see exactly what they had done, and there was no spinning it to make me the bad guy. That night at dinner, the house felt heavy with tension. Nobody spoke much. My dad's jaw was tight, Mom barely touched her food, and Tyler and Ava kept glancing between us like they were watching a ticking bomb. I didn't say a word, but I didn't need to. The silence was louder than anything I could have said. When I went to my room, I could hear them arguing downstairs. Dad's voice was raised, accusing Mom of letting things get out of control, while Mom kept saying they just needed to do damage control. I lay in bed listening to every word, a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction washing over me. For the first time, I could see it clearly: they weren't untouchable. Their perfect little image was cracking, and no matter how hard they tried to hold it together, they couldn't undo what had been exposed. I could see their control slipping through their fingers. The house felt like it was holding its breath. After the calls from my aunt and the rest of the family, everything changed. Mom stopped humming in the kitchen. Dad came home later than usual and barely said a word to anyone. Tyler and Ava avoided eye contact with me as though being seen talking to me might get them in trouble. The silence wasn't peace, it was the kind that comes before a storm, the kind that makes your stomach twist because you know something is coming and you can't stop it. For a few days, we moved around each other like strangers, speaking only when absolutely necessary. But under the surface, tension was building. Tyler made the first move one night when he knocked on my door and asked if we could talk. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, shifting his weight from one foot to the other before blurting out, "Was it really you who posted that story online?" I looked him in the eye and didn't deny it. "Yes," I said quietly, bracing myself for whatever would come next. He didn't yell. He didn't get angry. Instead, he just looked confused. "I mean, I get why you're upset," he said, his voice soft. "But you didn't have to tell the whole world. Now everyone thinks Mom and Dad are monsters." "They didn't need my help for that," I replied. "They did that on their own." Tyler frowned but didn't argue. He just nodded slowly and walked away, leaving me with a strange sense that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see things differently. Ava, however, wasn't as calm. She confronted me the next morning, slamming my bedroom door open so hard it rattled the frame. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for us?" she shouted. "People at school are talking about it. My friends keep asking me what's wrong with our family." Something in me snapped. "What's wrong with our family?" I repeated, standing up so quickly my chair tipped over. What's wrong is that our parents took the money I worked for and lied about it. What's wrong is that they thought it was okay to leave me out like I don't exist. If that's embarrassing for you, maybe you should be asking why they did it in the first place." Ava's face turned red, her anger faltering as my words hung in the air. She stormed out without another word, but I could tell she didn't have a comeback this time. By the weekend, the uneasy silence was shattered when my parents finally decided to confront me head-on. We were all sitting in the living room when Dad turned off the TV and stood in front of us like he was about to deliver a lecture. "Sophia," he said in that low, controlled tone that used to scare me when I was little, "this has gone far enough." Mom nodded beside him, her arms crossed tightly. "You have humiliated us. Your aunt, your cousins, even Grandma. Everyone is looking at us differently because of you. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" I stared at them, my jaw clenched. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to be excluded from your own family? To be lied to? To hand over money you spent months saving and then watch everyone else enjoy it while you're left behind?" Dad's face hardened. "You've made your point. But if you keep this up, don't think we won't take action. If you want to keep living under this roof, you're going to stop this nonsense immediately." The threat hung heavy in the air. Mom added quietly, "And don't expect any more help from us financially if you keep trying to ruin this family's reputation." Their words stung, but more than that, they lit something inside me. They still didn't get it. They still thought this was about embarrassing them, about making them look bad, when all I ever wanted was for them to treat me with the same love and respect they gave everyone else. I didn't respond right away. I just nodded slowly and excused myself, retreating to my room before they could see the tears in my eyes. I sat on my bed for a long time, staring at the wall, letting their threats echo in my mind. They wanted to scare me. They wanted me quiet. But later that night, when the house had gone quiet, I started digging deeper. I pulled up the mortgage statements again, and then I went through the bank records I had saved earlier. That was when I found it, another transfer I hadn't noticed before, one that didn't go toward the mortgage or credit card debt. It was a payment to a private account, one I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I wrote the account number down. This was another secret, another lie. They thought they could fool me forever. I spent the entire night digging through every record I had access to, determined to piece together the truth. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. The hidden account had been used for more than just one payment. There were multiple transfers over the last several months, all amounts I knew I hadn't been told about. It wasn't just about the Disney trip anymore. It was about trust, about years of being treated like my feelings didn't matter. By the next morning, I had a file ready, screenshots, bank statements, receipts, everything I needed to prove what had been done. My heart pounded as I crafted an email to my aunt and several other relatives who had already called my parents asking questions. My hands were steady, though, as I attached the documents and wrote, "I'm not trying to hurt anyone, but I can't stay silent anymore. You deserve to know the truth about what's happening. This isn't about embarrassment, it's about accountability." I hesitated for a moment before hitting send, but when I finally clicked the button, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't just defending myself anymore, I was demanding justice. The fallout came quickly. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop again, but this time the tone of the messages was different. Some of my relatives were furious at my parents, demanding explanations. Others reached out to me directly, saying they were sorry I had gone through this and that I was right to speak up. A few, though, were more cautious, telling me they didn't want to get involved, that family drama was messy and private. The mixed reactions stung, but I knew I couldn't focus on the ones who wanted to stay neutral. This wasn't about winning everyone's approval, it was about shining a light on the truth. Later that evening, while I was in the kitchen making tea, Ava came in. For a moment I thought she was going to start another fight, but instead she just stood there silently, her arms crossed. "Finally," she said quietly, "you were right." I turned to face her, surprised. "About what?" She swallowed hard, looking down at the floor. "About Mom and Dad. About how unfair it's been. I looked at the accounts too after what you posted. I didn't know they were doing all of that." Her words hit me like a wave. For weeks I had been fighting this battle alone, feeling like no one was on my side, but now here was my little sister admitting that she saw it too. I felt something crack open inside me, a mix of relief and sadness. "Thank you for saying that," I said softly. Ava nodded, still looking conflicted. "I don't want to fight anymore. I just want things to be fair." Her words gave me strength. The next day, when the family group chat lit up again with more questions and accusations flying back and forth, I didn't hold back. I posted the screenshots publicly in the chat, laying everything out for everyone to see: the hidden account, the cash withdrawals, the lies about the mortgage payments. There was no way to spin it now. The silence that followed was deafening. For nearly 10 minutes, no one said a word. Then the messages started coming in, one after another. My uncle wrote, "This is unacceptable." My aunt followed with, "You owe Sophia an apology." Even my grandmother chimed in, saying she was disappointed and that this wasn't how she had raised them. I could hear my parents in the next room, their phones buzzing just like mine. Mom's voice trembled as she read the messages aloud, and Dad just sat there, stone-faced, with his jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might break a tooth. But then, something incredible happened. Ava, my sister who had been so angry at me before, spoke up in the chat too. "Sophia's not lying," she typed. "I've seen the accounts too. She's telling the truth." It was like a switch flipped. The moment Ava confirmed what I had been saying, the balance shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just me against everyone else. It was me and my sister standing side by side, forcing the truth into the light. For the first time since this all began, I didn't feel alone. I finally felt I had allies in my fight for justice. The air in the living room was heavy that night, thick with the kind of silence that makes your heart beat louder in your ears. My parents had asked me to sit down, saying they wanted to clear the air. I could see from the set of their shoulders and the way they avoided looking at me that this wasn't going to be a gentle conversation. I took my place on the couch, my file of printed screenshots resting in my lap like a shield. Mom was the first to speak. Her voice was softer than I expected, but it carried that same careful edge she always used when she wanted to sound calm but stay in control. "Sophia, we know things have gotten out of hand. We just want this fighting to stop. We're still a family." I stayed quiet, letting her words hang in the air before I asked, "So why did you lie?" My voice was calm, too calm, and I think it surprised them. Dad shifted uncomfortably, his face tight. "We didn't lie. We just didn't tell you everything." "There's a difference." I felt my chest tighten at his words. "You told me you needed help with the mortgage," I said slowly, my voice steady but cold. "You looked me in the eye and said you were at risk of losing the house. And then you took my money and spent it on a vacation I wasn't even invited to. How is that not a lie?" Mom's expression cracked for a second, and she looked down at her hands. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said finally. "We just thought the trip would be good for the kids, for the family. We thought you'd understand." Something inside me snapped at that. "Understand?" I repeated, my voice rising now. "You thought I'd understand being excluded from a trip I paid for? You thought I'd understand being treated like my feelings don't matter? Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to find out from pictures and group chats that you all went without me?" They didn't answer right away. For once, they didn't have the quick excuses, the dismissive words they always used to turn things around on me. Instead, Dad let out a long sigh, rubbed his forehead, and said, "We're sorry, Sophia. We shouldn't have handled it that way." But the apology felt hollow, like they were just saying the words to make me stop talking. And for the first time in my life, I didn't let it slide. I stood up, the file still in my hands, and placed it on the coffee table. "These are all the transactions," I said quietly. "Every withdrawal, every transfer, every dollar that didn't go where you said it would. I'm done pretending this is just a misunderstanding. This was a choice. And I'm not going to let you do this to me again." Mom's head snapped up. "Sophia," she started, but I cut her off. "No," I said firmly. "Listen to me. I'm setting boundaries from now on. I will not give you another penny. I will not let you guilt me into fixing problems I didn't create. And if you think you can threaten to cut me off to keep me quiet, go ahead. Because I don't need this kind of support in my life if it comes at the cost of my self-respect." The room went silent. Tyler and Ava stood near the hallway, their eyes wide. Ava's expression was unreadable, but I saw something like pride flash across her face for just a second before she looked away. Dad opened his mouth like he was going to argue, but then closed it again, his jaw working as though he was trying to hold something back. Mom's voice trembled when she finally spoke again. "Sophia, please. We just want to fix this." "You can't fix it with words," I said, my tone softer now but no less firm. "If you really want to fix this, you have to change. No more lies. No more secrets. No more treating me like I don't matter." For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I could feel their fear, their desperation. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to make peace, I was the one holding the power. They were desperate, but I was finally in control. The weeks after the showdown felt like stepping into a new world. The house was quieter, not in a comforting way but in a heavy, careful way, as though everyone was trying to figure out how to exist in this new version of our family. I found myself spending more time with Chloe, who had slowly been reaching out to me since the confrontation. One afternoon, we sat together on the back porch, the autumn air crisp around us. She hesitated for a long time before finally speaking. "You know," she said softly, "I didn't agree with what they did. I didn't know how to say anything. You always seemed so strong, and I didn't want to get in the middle." Her words broke something open inside me. For the first time, I realized that my siblings hadn't just gone along with everything because they didn't care, they had been caught in the middle too. I turned to her and took a deep breath. "I know," I said gently. "I was angry, but I never wanted to lose you over this. I just wanted to be treated fairly. I wanted us all to be treated fairly." We talked for a long time that day, about our childhood, about the ways our parents had pitted us against each other without even realizing it. Tyler joined us later, and though he was quieter, he nodded along when Chloe spoke about the guilt she had been carrying. That conversation became the first step toward rebuilding trust between us. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't fighting this battle alone. But just as things seemed to be calming down, my parents made one last dramatic move. Late one evening, I got a long message in the family group chat. It wasn't an apology, it was a plea. They wanted us all to have a fresh start and suggested a big family dinner, the kind where we all had to be present, no excuses. Part of me wondered if they were trying to save face, to put on a show for the rest of the family and pretend nothing had happened. Another part of me worried they would use the dinner as another chance to guilt-trip me back into submission. I decided to go, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to show them that I wasn't afraid anymore. The dinner was tense from the start. The table was beautifully set, candles glowing softly, but the atmosphere was anything but warm. Mom gave a long speech about forgiveness and moving forward, but it was filled with subtle jabs, little reminders of all they had done for me over the years, as if to say I owed them my compliance. When she finished, everyone turned to look at me. The room was silent, waiting for my response. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart pound, but I stayed calm. "I appreciate the gesture," I said carefully, "but moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. I'm willing to have a relationship with you, but it has to be on equal terms. I'm not going to sacrifice my peace just to keep everyone comfortable." Dad's face hardened, and I could see him about to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. "If you want me in your life," I continued, "it has to be because you respect me, not because you can control me. I won't be guilt, I won't be manipulated, and I won't apologize for finally standing up for myself." The silence that followed was deafening, but it felt different this time. I wasn't shaking, I wasn't second-guessing myself, I felt grounded, solid. Tyler reached across the table and gave my hand a squeeze. Chloe smiled faintly, her eyes shining with quiet pride. For the first time, I saw something shift in my parents' expressions, not anger this time, but something closer to reluctant understanding. When the dinner ended, I walked out of that house feeling lighter than I had in years. It wasn't a perfect ending, there were still wounds that would take time to heal, but I knew that I had reclaimed my power. I had drawn a line, and for once, it had held. As I got into my car and drove away, I felt tears sting my eyes, not tears of sadness, but of relief. The kind of tears that come when you finally realize you've survived something that could have broken you. If you've ever had to stand up to family,
hit subscribe and share your story in the comments. I want to know how you found your strength. I was ready to live life on my terms.
Looking back on everything that happened, it still feels surreal to think about how much my life has changed in such a short time. When I first gave my parents that $11,450, I never imagined that it would set off a chain of events that would shake the very foundation of our family. I thought I was doing something good, something selfless. I wanted to help them, to make life a little easier for everyone. Instead, I ended up feeling betrayed, heartbroken, and invisible. There were nights when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had been foolish for trusting them so completely, wondering if maybe I had brought this on myself by expecting too much. But as painful as it was, that betrayal became the spark that forced me to grow. I went from being the quiet, accommodating daughter who carried the weight of everyone else's needs, to the woman who refused to be taken advantage of any longer. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments of anger that burned hot and moments of grief that left me hollow. There were fights that left me shaking and quiet nights where I wondered if I had done the right thing. There were times when revenge felt like the only language they would understand. And yet, through every step, I kept learning something new about myself, about what I deserved, about what I was willing to fight for, and about how much strength I truly had. In the weeks after the family dinner, things began to settle into a new normal. My parents were quieter around me, more cautious, as though they finally realized I wouldn't back down again. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no grand apology that fixed everything overnight. But slowly, in small ways, they began to show that they understood. Mom stopped making passive-aggressive comments about everything she had done for me. Dad started including me in family decisions, even when I disagreed. And my siblings, especially Chloe, became my greatest allies. We started having dinners of our own, just the three of us, where we laughed about old times and talked about our futures without feeling like we had to walk on eggshells. Then, something unexpected happened. One evening, Chloe called me, her voice trembling. She told me she was struggling with a personal decision, something she hadn't shared with anyone else. In that moment, I had a choice. I could have let my bitterness speak and told her she was on her own, the way I had felt left out so many times before. But I didn't. I listened. I sat with her, held her hand, and offered her advice that came not from a place of anger, but from compassion. It hit me then that revenge might have started this journey, but it wasn't what I wanted to define me. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life punishing the people who hurt me. I wanted to rise above it. That was my final act of empowerment, not another confrontation, not another dramatic reveal, but the simple choice to be better than the pain they caused me. Helping Chloe reminded me that revenge may bring justice, but kindness is what brings closure. I could be strong and still be soft. I could protect myself and still show love. In the months that followed, my life began to thrive in ways I had never imagined. I moved into a place of my own, decorated every corner the way I wanted, and for the first time, I felt like my space reflected who I was. My career took off because I wasn't distracted by constant family drama. And every time I looked at my bank account, I felt a deep sense of pride knowing that every dollar was mine, earned by me, spent by me, and used to build the life I wanted. Sometimes, when I look back at the girl who first sent that $11,450, I want to hug her and tell her that it's going to be okay. That she'll cry, and she'll get angry, but she'll come out of it stronger. That she'll lose some illusions, but she'll gain herself in the process. That one day, she'll sit across from her family and not feel small anymore. She'll feel powerful. And that's where I am now, stronger, wiser, and free. My parents may still struggle with what happened, but they know the old version of me is gone. My siblings know they can count on me, not just to support them, but to stand up for them if it ever comes to that. Most importantly, I know I can count on myself. This is not just a story about revenge. It's a story about reclaiming your voice, setting boundaries, and choosing to live on your terms. If you've ever been in a situation where you felt overlooked or betrayed, I hope my story reminds you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. You can take your power back. You can set the terms for your own life. I smiled to myself as I thought about how far I had come. The girl who once felt invisible was now living a life that no one could ignore. I was no longer just the eldest daughter holding everything together. I was Sophia Harper, my own person,
standing tall.